All right, welcome to the Wolverine Recruiting Show. I'm Clayton Sayfie with EJ Holland. This week, not a ton of action this week in Michigan recruiting. We'll be on the road once again. We talked about that in our high school recap show from last week. We previewed the games we'll be at this weekend, but we're talking some of the top storylines here in Michigan recruiting. Marlin Klein committed to Michigan this week, a three-star receiver slash tight end, but he is fully a tight end for Michigan. Sharon Moore sealing the deal with him out of Georgia, originally from Germany. So we'll start with that. Then we'll talk about Casey Finney, who decommitted over the weekend, last weekend, and actually flipped to Boston College. But we'll start with Marlin Klein. We talked about him a little bit in our previous video. But this is a kid who's athletic, like I said, listed as a wide receiver on Rivals. So he plays that quite a bit in high school. He kind of reminds me a little bit of a Zach Gentry who played at Michigan, obviously a couple of years ago, and is now, was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, and ended up, was a quarterback, a little more slender coming into Michigan, but was able to bulk up. I think Marlon Klein will probably, want to be able to do the same thing. But I want to get EJ's thoughts. So, EJ, first of all, what's up, man? And second of all, tell us a little bit about what you think about Marlon Klein joining the Wolverines here.
So yeah, it wasn't necessarily a surprise that Marlin Klein committed. Michigan was a strong contender early on in his recruitment. It was more so timing just because, it's the dead period. So you're not expecting to see a lot of 2022 commits, yet Michigan's landed two this month in Tyler Martin and Marlon Klein. Marlon's a really interesting prospect in the sense that I feel like his best days are ahead of him because he is pretty new to football. This is only his fourth year playing the sport. He's originally from Germany. I had a chance to talk to him yesterday for my podcast, and he kind of just told the story about how, he played soccer and basketball growing up, but he started watching football on TV and just kind of fell in love with it and gave it a try, got bored with the other sports and really liked it, and he knew that he had an opportunity to be recruited. So he was the best in the German league. So he made the transition to the United States. He found a program called Gridiron Imports that helps place athletes at boarding schools. And so he ended up in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. So he said that was a little bit of a tough adjustment for him, but he's adapted really well. I mean, he has the size. He's 6'6", 215. He has the frame to add more weight. Obviously with him, it's just going to be learning the intricacies of the game, adding that weight so he can do some more inline blocking. But, you see him listed as a receiver. He runs really, really good routes. He's really fast for his size. He told me he runs a 4.440. I don't know how legit that is, as far as laser time or anything, but he looks pretty fast for that size and he moves really well for that size. So I think with him, it's just a lot about potential. I know Sharon Moore made him a top priority at the tight end position, and I've talked to a couple of other Division I coaches, and they've all said, this kid's going to end up being a 4-star for sure. So with Marlon, it's just all about his upside, his ceiling, because he's so new to the game and he's so raw from a technical standpoint.
When you talk about tight end recruiting, we broke this down in our last video, the five candidates that could possibly be that second tight end in Michigan's class if they do in fact take two, which it sounds like they want to. But Michigan hasn't taken two tight ends in a class in quite some time. Can you just talk about how important that would be for Michigan, how much of an emphasis that is for Jim Harbaugh, Sharon Moore, Josh Gaddis as the offensive coordinator when they're looking at the board in terms of recruiting? Like, how important is it for them right now to focus on grabbing another tight end in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, they view it as a need for sure. That's why they wanted to secure such an early commitment from Marlon. But, you look at 2020 and they just landed Matt Hibner, who's more of an pure inline tight end who is known for his blocking but can catch, and then Lewis Hanson, who can do a little bit of both. They really wanted a true receiving tight end, so they got it in Marlon Klein. And then for depth purposes, they would really like to add another guy. So we broke down kind of five candidates to know. But yeah, Michigan is making the tight end position a priority for next cycle. And I think it's good that you get an upside receiving tight end in Marlin Klein, who again is from Germany. So he's a guy that might not make an impact right away, but in a few years he could turn into a really special player under Coach Moore. So yeah, I mean, from an overall standpoint, I think tight end is something that they're going to continue to recruit moving forward. I feel like they definitely want two tight ends in the class for 2022.
And you wrote this after he committed, but the momentum is starting to roll a little bit with some of these guys. You have Alex Van Sumeren, who's been in the fold for what, 9 months now or something like that, quite some
Right.
time. And then you have Tyler Martin, and like you mentioned, two guys this month. Um, at what point is it going to be where maybe they start adding more and more guys, or is it right now where they're going to continue to start coming, start popping here every so often?
I mean, it's pretty tough to project just with the dead period going on. I think with guys not being able to visit, it's kind of a little bit of an anomaly to have two 2022 commits come back to back in the same month, and they are moving in the right direction with a lot of these guys. We mentioned some commit candidates, Marlon being one of them last week. And so, I mean, you could see maybe a couple more dominoes fall, but I think it's great that you have Tyler Martin in particular as a part of this class because he has been to camps around the country. He knows a lot of these kids nationally. He's already been a vocal recruiter, recruiting Jaden Gould and Tyler Booker. So I think the momentum's definitely building, but it's just kind of tough to gauge as far as how many more commitments will come due to the ongoing dead period. And it's still being early for these guys. I mean, they're 2022 recruits.
Definitely. So Michigan adds Marlin Klein into the 2022 class. 2021 lost a commit over the weekend, as we mentioned at the top of the show, but Casey Finney, a three-star linebacker, kid who would project to play probably the will linebacker spot. I know there was a few factors that went into this, and as I mentioned, he flipped to Boston College, which is right. He's basically a guy that's right in their backyard over there in New England, but um, more of an under the radar kid, probably, you know, a candidate to be more of a project, but could possibly have some upside later on in his career in college. Um, Talk about the factors, I guess, that went into the decommitment of Casey Finney, and just kind of what impact that could possibly have on the rest of the class.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think losing Finney is that big of a deal. With him, he had a family situation where some family members were exposed to COVID, and then he had never visited Michigan, and Boston College continued to make a really strong push. And Michigan also got a commitment from Tyler Martin, who's a similar and arguably better prospect than he is. So I think he thought about it, and I honestly I think Casey made the right decision for himself. I think the path for playing time at the linebacker position is better at Boston College. It's closer to home. He's never visited Michigan, and on the flip side of the coin, I think it's great for Michigan because it opens up another scholarship, and I think Michigan is poised to find a better prospect that may be a different position. And then on top of that, you already have Tyler Martin committed, who's filling that role for the following cycle. So honestly, I think it was actually the best for both parties. So I don't really see it as a loss. I think from a perception standpoint, losing two commits, Casey Finney and Marcus Allen, isn't necessarily great, but Michigan's kind of combated that with two commitments in Marlin Klein and Tyler Martin, and then Tavier Dunlap as well. So so when they're losing them, they're gaining them. So it's been kind of evened out, I guess.
We've seen some decommitments from around the country, and I wanted to mention Marcus Allen and the fact that Michigan has had two decommitments as of late. They're kind of both different circumstances. I mean, one of them is certainly a sign of the times in terms of when you look at Casey Finney, it had to do with the actual pandemic, and that was certainly part of it. And then Marcus Allen was more so just maybe wanted to look around, wasn't necessarily, apparently feeling like he was as prioritized. But could this be a trend, not just for Michigan, but around the country? And how worried would you be if you're a Michigan fan about maybe some of the other kids that are committed to Michigan and have not visited Ann Arbor?
Yeah, that's the thing. Those are the kids to worry about. That the kids that committed blindly that have to rely on self-guided tours and not official visits. So I think yeah, it could be a trend with kids around the country, maybe staying with schools closer to home. There are a handful of guys in Michigan's class that haven't visited. Xavier Worthy, Christian Dixon being two of them, but I think those guys are pretty locked in. They're fine. They're early enrollees, so I don't think there's too much reason to worry there. Dominic Jadis hasn't visited. I don't think there's much reason to worry there, and not a lot of suitors on that end. The two I would have some concern about, one would be Jaden McBurrows from Florida. I don't think a lot of the Southeast programs are really coming after him too hard, and Michigan's making it a priority to keep him since corner recruiting has been so subpar this cycle. And then Jaden Hood's the one that I'm kind of worried about because he is a guy that Miami is pushing for, also from Florida. You already lost a linebacker in Casey Finney, so you're down to three. You don't want to be down to two. And even though I said Casey Finney's not that big of a loss again, you don't want to be down to two linebackers in the class. And Jaden's a very, very talented player. So keeping him on board is a must. And so that one concerns me a lot because he hasn't been to campus, and there is a big program down there pushing for him.
Mm-hmm. So those are basically the two big pieces of news this week. Remember to follow us over at thewolverine.com. Promo code BLUE60 is back, 60 free days of our premium content. EJ is going to be at IMG against Ravenwood to see Junior Colson against JJ McCarthy and Greg Crippen from IMG. So you'll be in Nashville. EJ, let's just get a quick excitement level for you to make that trip, see those guys. I know it'll be on ESPNU for those that want to follow along at home, and they can also follow EJ on Twitter and on our site. But EJ, let's get that excitement level for you making the big trip down to Nashville again.
Yeah, really excited. I mean, Junior Colson versus JJ McCarthy doesn't get any better than that. You also have Michigan commit Greg Crippen, a number of underclassmen targets, including Tyler Booker, who I mentioned. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Going to have dinner at the Colsons before the game, so it's going to be a great time. I'm excited. Also, didn't even mention I'm wearing my Germany jersey in honor of Marlin Klein. So
Okay.
there we go. German pride.
I like it. All right, that is our show for this week. I'll be down in the Detroit area over at Belleville for Belleville against Fordson, checking out former Michigan 2022 defensive back commit Miles Rouser. So keep an eye out for that coverage. EJ is all over the place as always. We'll have Austin Fox and myself on the road as well. So head over to thewolverine.com for that coverage, and we'll talk to everybody next time.